I'm legit pumped today that I have the guest Yasmeen Robbins for 3 questions. I got cool socks and everything.
I love it.
Okay, we've been like planning to do a podcast for
Ever.
We're gonna do short ones now because Yasmeen and I both have shoe addictions. And so we just happen to have shoes on us. So we spent the last 45 minutes not recording anything
Looking at Jordan ones.
and actually talking shoes. So just keep an eye out because eventually there's going to be like a legitimate Yasmeen and I are doing a shoe podcast on just talking Jordan 1s. Okay?
Absolutely.
And just to tease Yasmeen a little bit,
He has my favorites.
I'm gonna pull out my Jordan 1 UNC blue because Yasmeen. I'm just gonna
when we do our first podcast, we can both wear them because I'm gonna have a pair.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm like, let's just do matching shoes. They are like, okay, these are for all those. If you are only listening to the podcast and you are missing this right now, these shoes, I'm telling you,
exactly.
Right? Like, back me up on this. These are like,
I'm backing you up. Those shoes are by far one of the sickest pair of Jordan 1s, and I have to get my hands on a pair.
So nice. Okay, we're not even. By the way, anyone listening right now, we're not like gonna do a singular podcast on shoes. We're starting a series. Yasmeen and I are just doing a series on this because we could talk shoes. Like
we're gonna talk the drop. That's what we're gonna talk. The shoe drop.
Okay, all right. So we got to do this. So 3 questions today. Same 3 questions, and I don't know. Like, everything's gonna be related to shoes somehow. I don't know if we can get out of this. The first question is really kind of thinking about your teaching experience and thinking about your experience as a student. I'm going to share this. You told me one of the coolest things is when you have like awesome shoes and kids see it, right? Like, it's just like a connector right there. So it
is.
So when you look back at all your experiences, because kids look up to you and they see those things, they see how you connect. Who is a teacher that inspired you and why?
I will tell you right now, a teacher that inspired me was my 2nd grade teacher, Ms. Boyle. And I had the best experience in her classroom. She would open up class every day. She would get her little guitar and she would sit on her stool and she would play a song every class. And everything was like dedicated or aligned with her music somehow, whether it was reading or math or something like that. And that just like, I was like zoned in every time she played. It made me want to play the guitar, just so you know. Yes.
That's awesome.
So she definitely was the teacher that inspired me.
Well, it's funny because, like this is the thing that you and I just had like a terribly long conversation just talking about shoes.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big advocate. Like, you have to show your personal side to your kids.
You do.
And they're going to connect to anything that you teach, right? And I think sometimes, like you probably heard this advice. I don't know if it was given to you, but like, hey, like, don't smile till Christmas. I'm like, what? Like, why would anyone want to be that?
I would have thought that was complete nonsense.
You've heard that before, right? Like,
no, I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, no, it was like, don't smile till Christmas. Like, you got to set the tone, things like that. And it's like, no, like that, like I don't want to be in that environment where I don't know if this person likes me or has any interest. And I think that real connection. So what was the name of the teacher?
Miss Boyle.
Miss Boyle, shout out.
Yes.
That's my favorite button. I got a bunch of buttons that you're gonna have to endure this whole time. Okay, so Miss Boyle. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to talk about on our longer podcast, which is going to be like 7 minutes long because we spent all this time talking shoes.
Oh, good.
On the longer podcast, you are doing this initiative right now, and it's just amazing, the idea, and it's specifically geared right now towards North Carolina administrators.
Yes.
And really just trying to help them connect, learn from each other, because there is some uniqueness in the job. And, I remember when I first became a principal, how hard it was to kind of feel like you're isolated. You don't know what you're doing. I had a really great principal when I was assistant principal, and that really helped me. I know not everyone has that situation.
Exactly.
So with all of the work that you're doing with administrators, and I know that you were formerly an assistant principal, now you're doing something else. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Who is, like, when you think of like great administrators, who is someone that comes to your mind right away, and why?
Immediately, and it's hard to say this. Can I say 2? Because they both have 2 different aspects. So my first administrator that I say was like amazing is Dr. Kane. She was my principal at Cumberland Road Elementary. I was actually an instructional coach when I was there at Cumberland Road. But when you talk about transparency, that was her. She was transparent about every aspect of the school. And she saw actually the leadership quality in me. I had never thought about being a principal. She came to me and was like, I think you'd be a really good principal. And I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, you should. Like, I see it in you. So as she saw that in me, she like unknowingly kind of built me for that role.
Mhm.
She brought me in. She gave me access to teacher evaluations, access to meetings and budget, and she just taught me a lot of things. So you talk about just being able to be transparent and to learn and not really know that you're learning all these things because it's really preparing you for something that she saw in me. Amazing. She is by far. But then the other part of her is that she's human, right?
Mhm.
She has this aspect to be able to show how much she loves. Like a lot of times administrators are very stern and a very it's very hard to connect, but she wears her heart on her sleeve. And she's very supportive and she's able to empathize with her staff and with her kids. And that's one of the things that I just loved about her. And I loved working with her. She's amazing.
Like, I wonder, somebody said this to me that, they said, and it was yesterday, I've been thinking about it all day because they said, you kind of have this certain style where you're very emotional, you're very,
Hmm.
and I don't know how to be anything else. Right. And I think
Yeah.
I think there's some people that have that aspect to them, but you also can tell when someone's doing that and it's like not like legit too.
Yeah,
Right.
like not genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like, and I'm a big believer. Like, if that's not you, don't like if that's not how you are, don't fake it because that's gonna cause you more issues. And so,
Exactly.
but I do think sometimes we repress those things because we feel like, hey, if I'm like seen as having like a weakness or something, or I'm struggling with something,
Mhm.
that actually makes me look worse. But I found that people connected with me more when they saw that I was like, hey, I'm also struggling with this stuff right now too. Right? It's not
Yes.
just you. So you
Yes.
said there's two. Who's the other one?
The other one is Mr. Hatch, and this is the principal that I was just assistant principal under. When you talk about energy trans transforms your building hands
Mhm.
down, and I saw it with him. He brings in an energy that never ends. He
Mhm.
is nonstop. He's on it. He's in classrooms. He's all over the building, and everyone in the building feeds off of his energy.
Mhm.
So when you talk about creating a space where you know that you're the catalyst for what type of culture you're trying to create, he's got that hands down. And I love that about him. I love it about him.
It's like talking Jordan 1 energy that we just had. Like, I'm like jacked up talking about this stuff.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. So, energy, transparency.
There you go.
Love it. Love it. All right. So, last question.
Okay.
So there is, like, we've had such great conversations, and I know just all the stuff that you do in education, and there's no way that all of a sudden you just woke up one day and were like knew all these things. There's no way, because, and if you did, that would be amazing, but I don't think anybody does, right? Like, there's stuff I used to totally believe, that I would have probably bought into at one point, like, don't smile to Christmas, right? Because, like,
Yeah,
you don't know, right? And it's like, why
exactly.
should I
Yeah.
be doing this stuff? So when you look back at your career and all the amazing stuff you do, all the things that you're leading, there's got to be something that you're like, nah, a little bit, maybe that was a little bit embarrassing, or I would go back and fix that or think different. Like, what is something that sticks out to you, during your whole process, being in education, that you would go back and say, like, hey, this is advice I would give to myself to change.
There's so much advice I would give to myself, but um
Right.
seriously. But as I would say as a classroom teacher, um I was always a risk taker. I think in
Mhm.
in my career, just in general as a person, I'm a risk taker. Um, but sometimes you get into environments that kind of put you in a box,
Mhm.
and then you're afraid to take risk. So what I would tell myself is to trust
Mhm.
your intuition when it comes to your kids, your classroom, and be the risk taker that you are. Because me and taking those risks, it gave me the opportunity to tap into students and for students to be able to see learning differently. I would try new things all the time, but sometimes you get into certain schools and, teaching over the 8 years, you'll get into schools and you'll get into a box or you'll get into a rut. Try new things, be willing to try new things constantly. Like, teach as if you are trying to entertain yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you're trying to entertain you, your students are going to be entertained too.
Totally. This one of the things that when you say risk, I don't think it's like, hey, let's like push kids off the building and see what
No.
happens, right? And I think that's what I think a lot of people they associate it with is that risk is danger, right?
Yeah, no.
And I actually years ago I wrote about this. I said risk is simply moving from a comfortable average in pursuit of an unknown better. That idea
Exactly.
of like, hey, there's things that we stick to in our lives that we just are so comfortable with, and we know that they're not really great. Could be a relationship sometimes, right? It could be, you know, some other aspect. And then we like move on from it and we're like, why did I do that for so long? Right. And you get stuck in that rut. And so I love that. So I'm going to do a risk here. So for all the people watching, you got to show those Jordan ones just to end the podcast.
Oh,
You got to show them because this is how we spent 45 minutes talking about these.
If you're looking for these,
what's the colorway? What's the colorway?
These are the silver toe.
They're so
Jordan
nice.
ones.
They're so nice. They're so
amazing.
Nice. Yeah.
They're amazing.
No more dress shoes over here. It's just Jordan ones. Just Jordan ones. Yasmeen, I am so pumped just to talk to you and just your energy and just excitement for everything. And I cannot wait to talk to you more. This has been so awesome. I almost like wish we recorded it, but also I don't want to maybe share that with anybody.
It's all good.
Because we're going to save it for we're
going to do it again.
For the series.
Exactly.
So, Yasmeen, thank you for all you do for education. Thanks for being here. And everyone, thanks for listening. No laugh track with her. Thanks, everybody.